Well, hello, everyone, and I want to welcome Diane, who's here with us today, as an expert in teaching group. She has a really awesome way that she does it, and teachers that teach group all kind of teach their own different ways, but there is a lot to learn from Diane's experience and the way that she does it. So welcome, Diane, and thank you for doing this interview.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be part of it.
Oh, great. Well, tell us, kind of lead us through your piano teaching journey, because you didn't always have a private studio, and just tell us how that all came about.
Okay. Yes, I had taught public school, primarily elementary music, for 31 years. And in that period, during that period of time, I got my Kodai certification and really transformed my teaching. The methodology, child developmental, it was just wonderful. I had also taught a little bit of private piano occasionally, not every year. I would take a few students after school one-on-one. When I retired from school teaching, we moved back to my small town of about 3,500 people. There was not a regular music piano teacher. When I grew up, there were 2 or 3. So I knew that there was a need, and I wanted to open a private piano studio. But having taught public school and having taught particularly in the Kodai method, I knew I wanted to teach group lessons. It was just the most effective way when children are together, they learn together. The Kodai method is based upon folk songs of the land and game songs. So the small group just was the perfect setting for that. So that's how I came to teach in groups and taught
Nice.
exclusively in groups.
So ever since you opened your private studio, you've run it this way in the small groups.
Right, correct. I have.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. And so that answered my next question. Do you exclusively teach in groups? You do, don't you? You don't have any
Yes.
private. Okay.
Right. Uh-huh.
Okay, so tell me how this works. Like, how long are your group lessons?
I have 45-minute lessons, and I teach. My schedule has been teaching Tuesday through Thursday. So if I usually start at 4 o'clock, so from 4 to 7 is my teaching time, and that gets me 4 classes,
Wow.
4 45-minute classes. And of course, there's not just one child during that time. You've got 3. I average 3 to 4 students. I have had as many as 6, and I have keyboards and everything for that, which we can go into later. But usually it's that in 45 minutes.
So in the way that you teach, what's the most amount of students that you could comfortably have in a class?
For regular lessons throughout the year, my piano year is September through May. 6 is really within the 45 minutes. I think that's the maximum that I can comfortably get everyone in, because you've got to have individual instruction and play in, and the class is set up so that is able to work. But with piano summer camp, which is another thing we can talk about, I have had up to 8 in a class, and that's a 2-hour time frame, and there's just a lot of things that makes that work.
And that's a little different. But just thinking about the dynamics of that, if a teacher was teaching private one-on-one, those lessons are typically 30 minutes.
Right.
So if you're able to do, let's just say 4, because that's an average, and you have 4 classes a day, that's 16 students on that day, times 4, what is that, 64? I mean, if each class were full and you could do it those 4 days, that's a lot of students for only 3 hours of your teaching time every day.
Right. And
And
3 hours a week and 3 days a week
oh,
also.
and there's 3 days a week. I was multiplying it by
Yeah.
4. Okay, so I know that there's outside prep time, but there's outside prep time for private lessons too. So I think it really leverages your time
I
just
agree.
just from what we've talked about already.
I
Okay,
agree.
so you mentioned that you have keyboards. What is the setup that's required to teach the way that you do?
Well, for someone just starting out and wanting to teach group piano, I would not let that like, oh, I don't have enough keyboards for every child. I wouldn't let that stop me at all. If you have a piano, uh, I have, you can see behind me, a digital piano because and it's the weighted keys and the whole thing with the pedals, and it works nicely because during one of the hurricanes in Louisiana, I lost things. So that works fine, but I also have just a 61 key keyboard. And
Oh,
I have enough, and a stand, and I have enough for a keyboard for every child in the thing. But if you only have just your piano and a couple of students, it's going to be fine. Or if you have a
okay.
piano and one keyboard, it's going to be fine. I started my studio before we had a little building. I started in my dining room. On my dining room table, I put the keyboards out there, and we had little stools, or I even used a little tiny step ladder that I put a cushion on, and that was where they sat. So it's not just an overwhelming thing to say, oh, I'm going to teach group piano, I've got to have this big setup. It works. You can make it work
I
in a
love
limited
hearing
way.
I love hearing how like you started in your dining room because so many
Hmm.
teachers can relate to that. And we look at other
Yeah,
teachers and they have these polished, beautiful studios. And
right.
sometimes we think, oh, I'll never get that. Mine just isn't that.
Exactly.
But we all started somewhere in a
Exactly.
basement, in the dining room,
Hmm.
it's like so
Right.
it's really encouraging to hear that. Okay, so that's the setup. Now, how and you schedule those back to back or do you have time in between?
I do it back to back. My first couple of years, I did leave a little leeway in between, but it was just unnecessary because it made the day longer, to get that break time in there. Because you're going to have into the weekly lesson, you've got a little intro time, a little greeting time, you've got a little goodbye where they do a little attendance and, get a piece of
Okay.
candy, etc. So, and while that's happening, I have other students already coming in. Their parents tend to drop them off early. So it just works just back to back.
Oh,
And
that's great.
yeah, and after having taught public school and being on this schedule and being responsible for 21 something kids or 25 kids in the
Okay.
classroom, and you can't go to the bathroom when you want to, it makes it so nice to have your own studio and just say, boys and girls, I'll be right back, go ahead and get your music. So it's fun.
That is a great background you have comparing it to public school because
Yeah.
you're only doing it for 3 hours, not like 6 or 7
Right.
hours.
Right.
Oh, that's
Right.
great. Okay, so the burning question that a lot of teachers ask, and including in private lessons, but especially for group lessons, what about makeups?
I put in the newsletter and the introductory letter to the year this sentence: life happens, I know, and I am available for makeup lessons. And that's true. When you have children, you've got sickness, you've got dental appointments, you've got other, activities, school activities, family things. And the best thing you can do is offer the opportunity. And group lessons makes that happen so easily because you can just plug them in. I found with with especially the younger ones, you can say, all right, can you come to the class? Your regular time is 4:30. Can you come to the class before that for maybe the 30 minutes before, not the full lesson? And they may not be on the same level. They may be a little higher, a little lower, but that child that's doing the makeup, they're going to be able to play for me. They'll interact with the other children because we do activities. And if it's a younger group that they're in the makeup lesson, I'll tell that child that came to the makeup, like, oh, you remember this one from before. I want you to help me be or if it's, an older group, I'll say, oh my goodness, you're getting a head start by listening to these children do that. But I want them to listen to you play yours, and they're going to help you. And, so it just works. And there's a lot of goodwill among the parents whenever you offer that, because I charge tuition by the month, and it's payable the first lesson of the month. And because you do offer that makeup, I never had any questions about, oh, can I deduct this month's, this week's tuition because they didn't come. So that's another point for having makeup lessons.
That's great. And I can totally see how if they're a younger student going into a more advanced class, sometimes that's motivational. Like, ooh, look what I'll be
Definitely.
able to learn to play. And
Right.
on the flip side, if they're going into a younger class, I've had students really take on more ownership of their piano when they're helping teach someone else, you know?
That's very
So
good point.
either way, I think that's a great thing. I kind of hope everyone gets a makeup once in a while so they can benefit from
Yeah,
that.
experience it, right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So tell me how your group lesson is structured. Like what activities do you do? You mentioned a goodbye activity and an intro activity. Tell us
Hmm.
about that.
Well, because I teach in a group setting and I use the Kodai, it's based upon the Kodai method, which is using game songs. When they come into the class, they'll put their piano book on the keyboard, and they have a song that would have been assigned for the week that they would have practiced on. So I'll say, I know you did this song last time. Let's play that game one time. So we sing the song and play the game just once. They'll know that they're going to have another turn, but it just takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes. But the beauty of that is they're experience music by singing and playing the game. They are internalizing the music, the melodic and rhythmic elements. And then they go to, after we do it one time, I'll say, oh, we're going to play again in a minute, but I want to hear you play yours on the keyboard. So they all go to the keyboard, they open their page, and we talk about things that they can do together. They are reminded of the rhythm. They'll read and clap the rhythm. They'll tell me how many measures they counted or they numbered. They'll tell me rhythmic things. They'll tell me melodic, like where their hands were or what the new note that they learned. And then at that point, I'll say, all right, turn your keyboard to silent or turn them off. And I'll name one child. I want you to play by yourself. And at the beginning, they're singing and playing their note names and then the words. And because these are like at the most 8 measure songs, it goes quickly.
Okay.
And I tell the other children, you can be practicing silently, or you can be following and tracking with your finger where your classmate is doing. And so each one has a turn to do that. Then I'll say, let's play that game again. And I'll name, a couple of, you sit and play and sing, and they're going to play the game, and then they take turns. Then after that comes the learning song, which is going to be their new assigned piece for the week. And
Okay.
this is a game song they would have just heard at the end of the prior week's lesson. They did not see the music. They just listened to me. I taught them the song. Maybe I demonstrated the game or we played it one time and that's it. So now comes more intensive as far as play. And I'll say, oh, do you remember that game we just started last week? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now we're all going to have a turn. So we all do that. So what is the purpose of that? Again, when everybody has a turn, they are really internalizing the music. And then I'll say, go back to your keyboard, look at page, the next page, and here's that game song, and that's what we're going to be working on today. Sometimes if it's a brand new element or brand new note or rhythmic thing, before we go to the keyboard, we'll go over to the white board or staff board, and I'll show them that note there, and then they'll go to their or rhythmic, pattern, whatever. Then when they get to their book, they'll see that. So And again, we talk about things that they can do together. They number their measures, they circle their meter signature, they circle a little keyboard picture that tells them where the notes are located and what notes they're using. And after they've done all the things that they can do together, often is clapping and reading the rhythm. Then I'll tell one child to stay at the keyboard because you're going to play for me alone. And the rest of you take your book, go sit at the table where the colored pencils are, because every page in the book that I use is also a color sheet. And so that, and I tell them, you just be over there quietly coloring and you can visit just so I can't hear you, which they love that freedom, you know. Or I'll tell them maybe to draw on the staff board, whatever. And then I'll call them up one by one. And again, there's that individualized instruction that has to happen, but it's because they're small songs. It goes quickly. I would say maybe 7 minutes or something like that. So after they've all played, I'll say, okay, that's your assigned piece, put the date on it. And then I want you to come sit down over here again, and I'll introduce a new song. So just like I had said, this is something they will not see the music, they're just going to hear it. And I know that that's going to be their next week assigned piece. So then after they've heard that new, and that's just maybe 5 minutes at the most, then they'll go and mark their attendance. Somehow I've done several different incentives, which could be a whole nother lesson of some fun things. And they get a piece of candy, and they know the last lesson of the month, they go to treasure box. So that's my 45 minutes.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. And I can see how then it just seamlessly flows into the next week's lesson. And it just keeps
Right.
going like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, couple other things. I really am excited to hear about the resources you have. But before we do that, can you just talk about how do you deal with class management?
Uh, they, because with young beginners, and older beginners, I use the game songs, and they all know they get to have a turn. They get to go places and run and jump and chase. We get to go outside sometimes. They get to hold things. That is the biggest incentive to be able to have their turn, because if they're disturbing, I will say, I am so sorry that you forgot what happens, that I didn't get to hear your classmate because you weren't, so you're just going to have to sit and watch the rest of them. Well, they don't want to do that. But if it happens, you just as the teacher, you've got to have classroom management, or you're not going to have any teaching. And so as hard as it is, because now at my grandmother age, I want to just say, oh, be good. But like, I have to have the school teacher mentality, like, go sit and play. You must not know how the game goes, so you're just going to watch this time. And I use that kind of voice. And then they'll sit there, and most of the time I don't have that many issues at all. And then I'll say, okay, come on. And they'll get back in the game and they'll go their turn. But it's such a deterrent for the other children, because they don't want to miss their game, and they're happy that they still get to play.
Okay,
So
very,
that's how I do it.
very helpful. Okay, so resources, you mentioned like the songs that you teach, and what books are you using?
I have written a book for beginners, young beginners, and I call it Play and Play. And this is the revised Stanton version
Okay, look
that
at
I
that
just about.
cover. That is so
Yeah,
clever. It's a keyboard
my
with a jump rope. Oh, that's cute.
yeah, my art teacher coworker, when I was teaching school, she had done some things for me, including a big mural that I just used for all kind of games. But she also illustrated all this, and I just love it because it just, children are playing, they're having fun, and which Play and Play. Two things come to mind. There is a quote from attributed to Mr. Rogers that says, play is the work of childhood.
Oh, I
And then
like that.
another uh, quote is from Diane Ackerman, who wrote The Zookeeper's Wife. And she said, play is the brain's favorite way of learning. And so when I put this play and play, we play the game, but we also, we're playing the music. So this is the book, and you'll see like there's something to color. And this is, I don't know if you can see it, this is one of their favorite ones because it's a key. And I've even gone outside to my flower garden and played this with them. And so they have to find the key. I have a green one that we put in the thing, but they love to color. And I'll tell them, oh, I hope you can, I hope I can find it. But, and you'll see there's the, on this side, the keyboard that picture that tells them where to go. So this goes through grand staff. And there are some more sophisticated things in here. I do syncopation, the eighths, ti-ta, ti. I do dotted quarter followed by an eighth. I do 3/4 meters. So for my older children, lots of times, or returning students, I'll come back and do these as just a warm up or practice resource for them. And the teacher book, I did it so it's a really easy, seamless way to do it, because on this side are the teacher instructions for both the game and whatever music element they're doing. And then on the opposite side is the exact student page. So you're right there with the children, and it's easy to teach like that. And then I also did a resource guide, and I had talked about piano summer camp earlier, which is the way that I recruited and started group lessons. And so in this book, it tells you how to set that up. And I have extensive lesson plans for a 5-day camp. In fact, here's some little fellas out in my flower garden. They are looking for the closet key. I put that picture in there. And then there's reproducible student pages. And so by the time they finish that, they're doing black keys, but they're, reading this rhythm. And there's also things about setting up your piano studio. But if you want to teach group and you've been teaching one-on-one, the best way to educate parents about that is to offer a piano summer camp where they're together, and then they just understand how that works, and it's a positive thing.
That makes sense. Wow, that is awesome. So, if someone wanted those books, where can we find them?
You can go to they're on Amazon, and the teacher and student book are revised edition, and with Amazon they leave everything on. So make sure you see the edition there, the revised edition. Also on my website is a link to get the books from that.
You mentioned that you also have a YouTube channel.
Yes, I have. It's called Play and Play in Piano Class. And I have been putting demonstrations and activities that come from the book. And so you'll see some things going on with children, or I'm showing you some of the materials and how I do it. And not just within the book itself, but some things about, like I was mentioning before, some incentive for practice incentives, just lots of things about playing and how that really helps teach children to play the piano when they play games. So those kind of things.
Oh, all right. And we'll link to your YouTube channel also, because that would be great to be able to see those. And tell us one more time those quotes that were so awesome about children and play and how they learn.
Yeah. Play is the work of childhood. And my Kodai teacher, my first teacher, who is just known throughout the US and other countries, Lamar Robertson, I can so remember him saying, to the children, it's a game, but they don't know the sophisticated music that they're learning to read. And that is so true. And so it's their work. They don't know it though, because they're just having fun. And then the other one is play is the brain's favorite way of learning. It is for me as an adult.
I agree too. I agree. We don't want to do things that are just hard
Yeah,
and seem like we're,
tedious. Yeah.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
like if you want to instill like 16th notes, I've got some activities that are just so fun with 16th notes where you could say, all right, let's do this 10 times. Everybody practice this rhythm. Or you could say, let's go play that game. And which do they want to do?
Yeah, I
That's
gotta
how I
play.
want to teach. I want to be playing. I don't want to be listening to drill myself.
Exactly. Wow. All right. So that is some excellent information. I really appreciate you sharing all that. I think that's really going to be helpful for some teachers that are considering doing group or even adding some of those valuable things into the way that we teach group. So thank you so
Sure,
much.
sure. And I will say, if when people click on and they have a question about something or they just want to know, I get in touch with me because you'll see how to do that on my website. I am very happy to just say, okay, let's do a video chat and I'll play this game for you and see how it works. Because I do teach Kodai summer courses, university courses to music teachers, and that happens all year. Even it's so much to keep in your brain. It's like they will just say, could you just play that game one more time or tell me what were your steps to get to that? And I'm very happy to do that.
And what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably from my website, there's a place that you can contact me on, but I'll also give you an email link also.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait till to see what people do with this information.
Right. Well, very good. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. All right, we will see you later.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.